Hi guys, and welcome back to my channel. So for today's video, I'm going to talk about supernatural events. So as Halloween gets closer and closer, I realized that it's spooky time, and spooky time reminds me of times where in previous homes that I've lived with my parents when I was young. So I was born in Los Angeles and I moved to Mexico 22 days after birth. So we came back when I was around 3 years old, and that was to come to school here, learn this language, learn English the proper way. To the third house that we lived in was a smaller house with a big backyard. So when this was when I was I want to say six or seven, and we lived there for around a year or so, and the school that I was in was bilingual. So that meant that for Spanish speaking students, which was my primary language, which I learned in Mexico, but that's how I was raised, with Spanish, no English. It had a bilingual class, so that meant that I would learn in both languages, which would help me a lot since I came from Mexico. So we loved that school for that. And we had to wear uniforms, and it was like that kind of school. So my mom wanted that for me, so that's what we stayed in. So we moved to this house, and it was small. Like I said, it was a 2-bedroom in the house. It was a 2 bedrooms, a bath, the kitchen, and the living room. And then on the other side, it was a garage, but it was a long garage, as big as the house, but it was made into its own living space. So they probably used to rent it, or they used to share it or something like that, because the garage wasn't made for somebody to put in the cars. It was made as a own apartment kind of. So between the two was a little hallway that ended up going to the end, the end of the backyard. So it used to be our home, that little alley, but it was closed. It was part of the house, but it was just a hallway where there were doors in between. So there was the 2 doors, and then the hallway in between that led to the backyard. But we had access to both. So when I was small, I hardly remember it, but I remember it because it was creepy. So I used to go to the backyard a lot when I was small. My mom didn't like when I went by myself. I didn't know why until after, when I was old enough, and she told me remember why I wouldn't let you go out backyard. Well, I guess in the backyard, a couple years before, there was a pool in the back too. There was a pool in the back, but it was the tall ones, that one that you would build. So it was built, and it just had a bunch of wood and things that nobody could swim in. It wasn't for swimming. And I guess a little kid, a couple years before, it was full and he wanted to go swimming, so he went for a swim. Now when that happened, the mom, nobody noticed. They didn't notice that the kid was missing until later on. They were asking him where is he at, and they decided to go check upon the pool, which I believe the pool was also not even used. It was just full of water. It was nasty. So I think he was just playing and he fell in or something. But point is that he passed away in that pool. So I would always want to be in the backyard rather than in the front, which the front was prettier. I don't know why I would always go to the back. So I didn't find out about what happened in the pool until after we moved, because my mom didn't want to tell me while living there. But I guess when I was in the backyard, my mom started noticing that I would talk to somebody, and that's the creepy part. I would talk to somebody, and I totally forgot the name. I need to ask my mom, but I must say it was Tony or something. I think it was Tony. I'm not like 100% sure, but it was like Tony, and let's say it was Tony, and I would talk to this Tony, but there was like nobody there. And I wasn't like the type of girls, like I'm an only child, so I wasn't the type of little kid that would just have imaginary friends. Like I never grew up like with imaginary friends. Like I always played with my dolls, or that's it. But I would talk to somebody, and my mom started noticing, and she was like, who are you talking to? Like, what the heck? And I guess I would tell her, like, oh, I'm talking to my friend Anthony. He used to live here. Like, I didn't even know, like, prior to that. I had no idea what had happened in that house before we moved in. But I told my mom, like, the whole kind of story, but I didn't tell her like what happened, that he was dead or nothing. I just said like, oh, he used to live here, he used to have so many brothers. Like I legit said everything that actually was true. So my mom asked like the owner of the house, like, hey, like did anybody live there like before that was like this age? Because he was like my age, I said, I guess. So she's like, yeah, and she told my mom the story, and my mom was like, how many like brothers did that little kid have, or what, and like everything that she told my mom was accurate to what I had told her, but I had no idea of it happening. So that was the creepy thing. So as soon as my mom figured that out, she was so against me going to the backyard until we found a new home, because they started getting so creeped out that the fact that I had said everything that happened, like about the little kid, like how many brothers, how old he was, like everything was right. And I used to talk to somebody, so my mom was just like freaking out because she was so scared about it. Like, why is she talking to Ted, Toby, Anthony, whatever his name was. So yeah, that was the first story like that I remember happening with supernatural things. And then after there, we moved to another house. This house was like, it was a ranch. It was a ranch, but it had two houses. It was one in the front and then one in the back. And we used to live in the back one. And it was like so tiny, like it was like a midget size. Like the ceilings were probably like 6 foot. So we were there not even for that long either, because in that house, I didn't really see anything supernatural like the first 6 months, or like the time that we were there. I think we were there for another year or two. I wouldn't see anything, but well, that's what I thought, and I would always think it was like from my outside window, because I used to live in the back. I was shared with the bathroom, they were shared with the laundry room. And all of the weird things, like I hated like sleeping alone in the house. I would always sleep normally like in my room. I would always be like, I'm fine, I'll sleep by myself. Like since I remember, I was young and I slept by myself. As soon as I got my own little bed, I started sleeping on my own. But for some reason in that house, I could not sleep. Like I had to sleep in my parents' room. Like I straight up did that for 6 months after first thing that I saw, because the first thing that I saw was, like I said, just shadows, but it was just like flash. Like it was just like a flash. Like that's all I see. But that was hecka creepy, because I was like, what the heck, am I blind or what? And my mom used to see it too, but she's never been like a supernatural, like she believes in it, but she's not like scared of it. So my mom was fine with it, and she would tell my dad, but my dad wouldn't believe her. So, and I used to see it too, but I never told my mom. I was just like, I don't like this house, like it's scary. Like I used to tell my mom. My dad would just say, oh, it was just because last time we were living at the other house, Brenda was talking to somebody, we don't know who. You're just like freaked out about that. My mom was like, no, like I see things, like you haven't seen them because you're not here most of the time. You only here after work, but I'm here all alone in the morning. And so was I, but like after 3, my dad would get home usually like 6. So he would just shower and chill, but he would never see anything. So one day I decided to get I wanted pizza so bad, and I made my dad go buy me pizza. And we came back home, and the kitchen was like in a corner, like it was on the side. It was like the kitchen, then it was like the living room, and then like a playroom, and in between all of that was my room. So the kitchen, there's a door where you can see straight through the playroom and the sala. So he was facing that way. So he was facing the playroom and the sala, and I was facing like the wall. So like at the end of the kitchen. So he was facing everything, and he was looking down. He was gonna buy a pizza, or he was drinking or something. He was drinking water or something. And he looked up, and then he looked down, and he was like, "Oh shit!" And I was like, I didn't even want to turn. I was like, I'm not gonna turn, because his face was pretty like, what the heck was that? And he didn't say anything, but he just like got up and he like walked over there to see. And then that's when I turned, because he was already walking over there. So I was like, what happened? Like, what? And then I just saw my dad telling my mom, like, I just like, he didn't even know what to say. He just looked at me. He's like, he started eating again, but he didn't want to say it. So it was so creepy, because that's when I started telling my mom, like, I don't want to sleep in my room by myself. Like, I will sleep on the floor with you guys if you guys want me to be in the bed, but I'm not going to sleep by myself in this creepy house. So my mom's like, you have to, like, you have your bed, you have your TV, like, you need to sleep on your own. And so I was like, nope. If I go over there, like, I'm sleeping with my lights on the whole night. And my mom's like, okay. So the only way that I would go to sleep to my room was if I'd fall asleep, like, in the room. My dad would carry me to my room and leave the light on. If I didn't do that, like, I could not sleep all night. But yeah, those were like straight after each other, like one house and then the other house. And soon after that too, my mom was like, we need to move out. Like, we need to go to a place that's not haunted, that there is no, like, nothing. And by that time, we were trying to buy a house, but we were looking and looking. So, like, we got out of the ranch and moved into the city, and we were fine. We moved into some apartments, but it was like a house and then 2 apartments in the back, and we got the house. So the house was just built. It was like brand new. They did it from scratch. Technically, they just bought the land and then they built, and then we moved in. I'm like scary cat when it comes to all of those things, especially when you're small and they tell you about like La Llorona and these crazy ass like stories, tales from Mexico. And let me know if you guys have ever gone through this or anything like that. Don't forget to subscribe, and bye.